Welcome back. Anime Lockdown. It's been a long day, but we did it. We survived. We have one more panel. We've done over 15 hours of programming. This is awesome. This last panel, as I told you before, is a pre-recorded panel. It's approximately 54 minutes long, so I'm going to let it run its course, and then we'll wrap up the convention and hopefully see everybody tomorrow. This is Straight Out of Kanto. I could put their graphic up. Straight Out of Kanto with horror and Pokemon. And in this case, she made it clear to me. She wanted me to let everybody know that the @ on there, that's her Facebook, not her Twitter account. She does have a Twitter account, but she's not as active on it. So she asked that I direct all traffic to their Facebook page, which is, it looks like it's Straight Out of Kanto 91, but if you search for Straight Outta Kanto on Facebook, you should find it. So, let's get to the panel.
Come, little children, come with me. Safe and happy you will be. Away from home now let us run. With Hypno you'll have so much fun. Oh, little children, please don't cry. Hypno wouldn't hurt a fly. Be free to frolic, free to play. Come with me to a cave to stay. No, little children, please don't squirm. These ropes I know will hold you firm. Now look to me, the pendant calls. Back and forth your eyelids fall. No, little children, you cannot leave. For you your families will grieve. Mind unraveling at the seams, allowing me to haunt their dreams. Now do not wail and do not weep. It's time for you to go to sleep. Little children, you were not clever. Now you'll stay with me forever. Hello, how are you? Dia gwitch, top of the morning to you, konnichiwa, bonjour, how ya? This is Straight Outta Kanto, Ireland's #1 spot for nerd culture, nightmares and nostalgia. Coming at you, not live, but coming at you from Ireland. How are you, Anime Lockdown Con? It is so good to be chatting with you today. It would be great if we were conversing under more pleasant circumstances, but look, I'm here, you're here. Thanks to the coordinators for organising all of this so we can all be here together, celebrating the weirdness, wonder and fun that is anime. I am so excited to be here. This is my first non-Irish panel, so hooray. I am so honoured and happy to be here, and I cannot wait to introduce you to one of the weirdest things I have ever done, which is a panel all about horror in Pokémon. Woo! So first and foremost, Straight Outta Kanto, that's Kanto, as in Kanto, where the original Pokemon games came from. This is a reference to me being a hardcore Gen 1er. Shout out to all you Gen 1ers out there. Hi, Boomer. And we are a podcast radio show, we are a blog, and we are a very weird set of panellists who go around to all the conventions in Ireland spreading the horror and misery of Pokemon! Hey! So as I said, I'm a Gen 1er. I have been playing since 1998. Pokemon was my gateway game into the world of nerd culture, Japan, trading card games, collecting memorabilia, and then as I got older and the internet advanced, it introduced me to the world of fan fiction, fan art, and creepypasta. Who's a fan of creepypasta out there? I know you are. So, but as I got older and all these things online, such as the memorabilia and the fan art and the fan fiction, kind of validated my continued love of Pokemon long after I was of an age where you should continue to play it, you know, in the kind of conventional norms. One of the #1 things I kept hearing from people I'd meet, be it at work or out and about or on a date or something, and I'd be like, yeah, I'm like a really into Pokemon, I collect this and that, you know, it's a hobby I'm really passionate about. And people would be like, Pokemon? But isn't Pokemon a children's game? And I'm like, is it though? Is it? Okay, well, yes, technically Pokemon is a franchise primarily aimed at pre-teen children to teens. However, such is the popularity, playability, and nostalgia factor of Pokemon, trainers continue to play well into their later years. While the games themselves don't age with the player the same way, say, that the Harry Potter books have aged with the reader, the game creators are aware that it's not just children playing, trading, and collecting. The game creators do acknowledge the advancing years of some of their more hardcore long-term players by adding the occasional more mature adult reference, theme, or Easter egg to the plot, or as fun little add-ons. The most dominant example of this is in Pokemon Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, where the residents of the Mobile City apartments discuss the horrors of a mortgage, being in debt, and abandoning their dreams. Reality aside, as the years progressed, one thing I became more and more aware of to reinforce my assertion that Pokemon wasn't just a children's game was the constant creeping abundance of horror, gore, and Lovecraftian madness included in the Pokemon franchise. This is where I got my horror and Pokemon panel. Not convinced? Well, don't worry, guys. Straight Outta Kanto is here to run you through as many of the terrifying secrets, illusions, references, and urban legends as we can fit into this 1-hour panel that may awaken you to the fact that Pokemon is not just a children's game. So, what are Pokemon? They're creatures for sure, with a different type for each one. There's fire, water, grass, bug, flying, rock, ground, electric, fairy, dark, ghost. There's endless debate about whether or not Pokemon are animals. Are they plants? A new species separate to man or animals? Are they aliens? Do animals and Pokemon coexist? The same way plants and plant Pokemon coexist? How come not all Pokemon are animal based? How can Klefki be a Pokemon? He's a bloody set of keys. Well, I think Pokemon are none of the above. Straight Outta Kanto thinks Pokemon are in fact yokai. Or at least an adapted variation inspired by yokai. What are yokai, I hear you ask, Anime Lockdown Con? Yokai are, for those of you who don't know, supernatural monsters, demons, spirits, and entities found in Japanese folklore. Yokai can be anything, from mischievous shape-shifting raccoons and foxes, the kappa, enchanted and animated musical instruments, lanterns, umbrellas, thing wraiths such as items you threw away becoming anthropomorphic for revenge, physical demons, goblins, hags, all the way through to ghosts of souls lost at sea, little girl ghosts haunting toilets, or skeletal manifestations of collective sadness, all the way up to the godlike entities. Sound familiar? Thought so. Basically, in Japanese yokai folklore, if there is an object, place, or person, chances are they are weird and enchanted in some way. Viewing Pokemon as yokai-like beings or entities makes it easier to understand their very existence, and adds weight to the backstories and Pokédex entries of the less desirable pocket monsters. There are generally 5 categories of Poké-related horror to discuss. They are supernatural, body horror, Pokédex entries, environmental horror, and creepypasta and the fans. While there are plenty of scary, strange and weird Pokemon in a non-supernatural capacity, this first section will be specifically with the supernatural and explicit ghostly ghost type Pokemon. So regardless of your own personal beliefs on real world debates, in the world of Pokemon there are ghosts, or at least ghost-type Pokemon. Whether or not these are just the spirits of deceased Pokemon or just standalone supernatural entities is not clear. But as there is ample evidence of human ghosts in the Pokemon franchise, not just Pokemon, the afterlife is definitely an accepted state of consciousness. How many ghost-type Pokemon can you think of? Are they regular ghosts or similar to yokai? What's your opinion on that? Have you any? So, of course, there are the stereotypical, traditional style accepted ghost type Pokemon such as Ghastly, Haunter, Gengar. You've got your Misdreavus, your Mismagius. They're all about the practical jokes, the spells. They're the kind of, they'd be the kind of ghosts where you'd be in a stereotypical kind of Scooby-Doo style spooky house, and they'd be the ghost underneath the white sheet coming at you going, boo. doing stuff like that. You know, they're the practical jokers of the ghost world. I still wouldn't want to run afoul of a Misdreavus or a Ghastly or a Gengar or anything like that. But, you know, they're the more... You know what you're dealing with when it comes to them. When it comes to someone, say, like Banette or Dalmise, on the other hand, they display more obviously yokai qualities. Banette is similar to a Thingray, the grudge-type Pokemon who was an abandoned toy who has animated itself through its sheer will of getting revenge on its owner who abandoned her. Oh god, well for starters, a grudge-type Pokemon, that's just a bit too Kayako Psyche for me, but you know, whatever. And then Dalmise is basically a grass ghost-type Pokemon, but he's an anchor Pokemon, and it's like... So you're a ghost type, you're an anchor, you're obviously part of the wreckage of a ship lost at sea. So that's kind of creepy. So if there's a spooky ghost type anchor, then there's probably going to be a spooky ghost type ship with some dead people on it. Like, I'm just saying. Then you've got Pokemon like Phantump, Pumpkaboo, Litwick, Honedge, Sinistea, Poltegeist. They are all, again, objects that for the most part embody a supernatural spirit. So again, that's a very yokai-like tendency, which again would explain, you know, because we can get like, you know, if there's say like a Arcanine is a dog Pokemon or Tentacool is a jellyfish Pokemon, Victory Bell is a plant-type Pokemon, that's very obviously, okay, that's an animal, that's a plant. But then for inanimate objects, how do you explain that? Again, yokai. Then moving on from, say, the spooky traditional boo ghosts or the yokai ones, then you've got like Duskull, Dusclops, Dusknoir. They are far more proactive members of the spirit world, actively hypnotizing and guiding both lost souls of humans and Pokemon to the world of the dead. They are also known for communing with the world of the dead frequently and channeling them. So like Duskull's all kind of like this creepy little skull and he's kind of coming out of this weird little hood and I just don't trust him, and he's got a little light shining behind his eye and you're not meant to look at his light because if you look at his light he'll like drag your soul to hell. And then Dusknoir is actually one of my favourite Pokemons ever, and I was so glad in Gen 4 when he kind of came into being and became Dusclops' next evolution. I just thought that was really cool. He looks really cool, he's really strong in battle, but he channels things with the dead, with the antennae on his head. You know, man. I'm sure it's not like a cool radio station he's picking up at that thing. Another yokai-like entity that again is more sinister than, say, just a haunted teacup or a spooky boo ghost. This is Drifloon, okay? Drifloon is like a balloon that abducts children. Like, that's really weird. Now, whether or not, like, Drifloon carries away children who hold on to it. Because, you know, like, if you like it, then should have put a ring on it. You know, little kid holding on to a Drifloon. Hey, look, I'm holding on to a cute balloon. And then it just, like, carries the child away. And it's like, okay. So whether or not this is out of innocent playfulness or, like, malicious intent is never clear. With Drifloon, there is a bit of ambiguity, so I'm going to err on the side of innocent until proven guilty for Drifloon. Unlike some other Pokemon, I'm sure we can all name who are known for carrying away children with definitely not innocent intent. Another Gen 4 edition who I absolutely love in the ghost type family, who is got yokai written all over her, is Frostlass. Now, Frostlass is a particular favourite of mine. This ice ghost Pokemon is a direct reference to the ice ghost legend of the Yuki-Onna. The Yuki-Onna legend is about a beautiful maiden whose frost breath steals the life force of men lost in the mountains. So imagine you're a ye olde time Japanese dude, you're going up the mountains, maybe you're a wood collector, like the guy from the movie Kwaidan based on the Lafcadio Hearn story. You're going up through the woods, you've got your wood on your back, you've lost your partner halfway down the mountain, the blizzard's getting worse, you find a small cave to hide in, you think you're going to be safe, then a beautiful maiden appears, and instead of saving you, she sucks the life out of you with her like vampiric frost breath. I just think that is so cool. And as Frostlass's kind of, you know, main modus operandi is basically to lure men to their dooms lost on the mountain and then kill them with her frost breath. It's like Frostlass, direct correlation with Yuki-Onna. Oh my god, I just think she's so cool. Now, with regards to what I was talking about with Banette, an idea similar to Banette that showed up in the later Pokemon games was Mimikyu. Now, Mimikyu is very similar to Banette in a way. So, with Banette has been a direct toy that has been abandoned. However, with Mimikyu is an kind of, I won't say ugly, but Mimikyu is an unloved, lacking in self-confidence and self-esteem Pokemon of unknown appearance and origins, and to make itself feel better and be accepted by society as a whole, has crafted the cutest, most messed up little Pikachu cosplay costume ever. First prize for cosplay contest. Oh my god, so Mimikyu is really cool. He's a ghost type Pokemon, dresses up as Pikachu. There is a rumor online that Mimikyu is actually a Clefairy/Clefairy Pokédoll that has done what Banette has done and reanimated itself from a very powerful grudge because Pikachu took Clefairy's spot as being the mascot Pokemon for Pokémon. And any Pokédoll you find in any of the games from Gen 1 all the way up to Gen 8 looks like a Clefairy. So there is a very credible rumour doing the rounds that Mimikyu is in fact a Clefairy doll that's done a Banette and become animated. And that's why it'd be quite small, because Mimikyu is quite small, because obviously, as you know, if you attack a Mimikyu in battle, the first move never works and it just breaks the disguise. The attack hits Mimikyu and then his kind of head will fall to the side. And the body underneath is quite small. So I do believe that. I believe that. Now, obviously, another example of the supernatural in Pokemon is, of course, Lavender Tower. Now, I will be discussing later the Lavender Tower Syndrome urban legend at the end of the show in the creepypasta fan section. Anyone who's played any of the original games or even the remake Let's Go recently will know that one of the most prominent parts of the game is to appease the soul of Marowak, who was killed by Team Rocket. They were trying to steal her skull for profit. She died and became this mysterious, malevolent ghost that really badly haunted Lavender Tower. And anybody who's been in Lavender Tower, which is basically a Pokemon graveyard or a memorial tower, where all the graves of all the Pokemon are, which is really sad to begin with. We don't see who the ghost is, and then there's this big reveal, oh, it's the ghost of Marowak, way! The music of Lavender Town Tower is very eerie. It's filled with these Shinto-style exorcists or channelers who are traditional Japanese, I suppose, exorcists, for lack of a better word. And they're there possessed by the ghastly and the haunter. And then you've got this fog moving around. And it's actually quite creepy because if you're an 8-year-old kid and you're in a big haunted tower part of a game and there's all these weird looking, and I say weird looking because when I was 8 I wasn't familiar with what a Shinto priest or priestess would dress as, especially not an exorcist one, and they're like, oh, give me blood, I want blood, I'm possessed by the spirit, blah 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 blah. So that's really eerie when you're a child. That's frightening. And then you're there trying to find these ghosts, and then you're trying to deal with the emotional damage from the fact that there's a Cubone whose mother has been killed, and now Cubone's this lonely Pokemon that cries. Oh my god, it's frightening. And as well with Marowak, it's even more poignant because in Alola, in Sun and Moon, Gen 7, Marowak is just a ghost type. That's heartbreaking. Can I get an F? Oh, thank you, that was a lovely F. Oh my god. And as well, not just with Gen 1, there's weird, creepy mysteries throughout the rest of the Pokemon games. For example, Ruins of Alph in Johto. What's up with that? It's has anybody ever been able to explain the story with the Ruins of Alph? That is creepy. It's where all the unknown is originally, the unknown Pokemon, and then there is an Arceus tie-in story, I think, in Heart Gold Soul Silver years later. But originally, if you went in there with your your little Pokegear radio, it would just be the creepiest music ever. It makes Lavender Town look like I love you, you love me, proper freaky ass stuff. As well with that, in every game there pretty much is a kind of a spooky section. In Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, there is of course the Mount Pyre, which is the Lavender Tower, but not as creepy. It's just more spiritual. There's the old chateau in the forest in Pokemon Diamond, Pearl and Platinum on your way to Eterna City. That's really cool. Now, I love the old chateau story. So basically, there is an urban legend online that if you go into the, well, the urban legend doesn't even really matter, to be honest, because in Pokemon Diamond, Pearl and Platinum, when you go into the old chateau, it's a haunted house. You are confronted with spooky little ghosts. There's plates on the dining table. They rattle around. There's a room where there's a haunted TV. Something's going to come out at the TV at you. Not the ring, just a rotom. And then there's a painting with like these spooky purpley red eyes that look at you when you move away from the painting. Turns out that that is a Gengar that you can catch if you're playing a version of Diamond, Pearl or Platinum with a cartridge copy in the bottom of your Nintendo DS from Ruby, Sapphire and Emerald. So, if you didn't know that, you're welcome. Only chance in the entire series, I think, pretty much of catching an in-game Gengar. So that's really cool. And there's like a little girl ghost floating around. There's a little butler ghost floating around. But what's fun about that is you can find an antidote in a bin in one of the rooms in Old Chateau. And there's a rumour that the rumour stems from the fact that outside the Old Chateau is the Eterna City gym leader Gardenia. And there's a rumour that Gardenia used to live there with her family. And she poisoned her family so that she could become gym leader. And that's why there is an antidote in the bin. Ha 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 ha. There was a fantastic Pokemon spin-off kind of anniversary TV show in 2016. I don't know if anybody saw it on the Pokemon app. I think it was like Pokemon Evolutions or Pokemon Origins. And there was an absolutely genuinely frightening episode of that based on Pokemon trainer Cheryl and her Chansey getting lost in the forest and going to the old chateau. And they think they're having a beautiful feast in this beautiful resplendent banquet hall. But it turns out they're sitting in this like spooky ass abandoned crumbling empty hall eating nothing with no one, and then they're just chased out of there by ghosts. And actually we don't know what happens to them. It's left on a bit of a cliffhanger, so the illusion is that they were like consumed by the ghosts. I don't know, but I do love the old chateau story, and it's a fun urban legend. There is of course the strange house of Lentimas in Pokemon Black and White 2. There is, of course, the Easter egg of a Kalos ghost girl who is featured with strong stereotypical J-horror tropes in Lumio City, coming out of a spooky elevator at night going, "No, you're not the one." Lights flickering, floating, music stopping. Ooh, did somebody call the Grudge? Of course, again, in Sun and Moon Alola, there is the abandoned Megamart. The Megamart was a big shopping mall built on top of sacred land to Tapo Bulu, and Tapo Bulu just was like, "No, not having any of this. I'm just going to destroy your town." And he did, and now there's this cool crumbling abandoned Megamart where you do the Mimikyu trial. Oh, I love it. The creepy, discordant accordion music, snapping spooky Pokemon with your camera. Oh, I love it so much. Do you know what's kind of sad though? I looked really hard. There's nothing scary in Galar. Other than the lack of a good plot. There's nothing scary in the later Pokemon games. It's quite sad. One of the most prominent examples of Pokemon going hard or going home with the spooky stuff is, of course, the legendary Ghost of Maiden's Peak episode of the Pokemon Indigo League series. That's the one where James and Brock fall in love with the ghost of a beautiful maiden who waited for years for her husband to return from sea, and he never did, but then it turns out it's actually just a ghastly. That's a really fun one. And same as well in the shortly after that where Ash is trying to get his Marsh badge from Sabrina, the psychic gym type leader, but she's got like such a cool badass backstory, and Ash has to go spend a night in the haunted tower, the Tower of Terror, to catch some ghost type Pokemon. I do recommend that. So of course I could talk all day about this, but I am of limited time, so that's just basically kind of straight out of Kanto's basic overview of latent, obvious supernatural elements and examples of the supernatural in Pokemon. Supernatural elements aside, the second kind of primary element of horror in Pokemon to kind of have a little look at is body horror, animal kingdom and moves. Now, while there's poignant fan art and little comic strips online about the death of Pokemon, with the exception of Unova's champion Alder, Pokemon death is shrouded in mystery and intrigue. Obviously they can die, but how? Considering what battling Pokemon do to each other on a regular basis, I'm surprised that there aren't more Pokemon deaths. For example, just look at the attack moves Pokemon do while battling. Flamethrower, Thunder, Hyper Beam, Cut, Slash, Seismic Toss, Skydrop, Earthquake, the Vampiric Leech Life, Toxic. Never mind the more sinister psychological moves such as Never Ending Nightmare, Perish Song, Confusion, Future Sight, Dream Eater. Any one of those alone would permanently damage, maim, or incinerate a normal animal being, or cause irreparable damage to a home or building or vehicle, you know? All this further serves to drive home the point that Pokemon are yokai. You can do what you want to them and they bounce back ready for more. It is frightening, and it shows that they are most likely not of this world. Even the physical Pokemon themselves, while a lot of them are cute and domestic, I for one would love a Stuffle and a Jigglypuff. A lot of them aren't cute and cuddly and domestic. They are giant birds, gargantuan rock monsters, larger than life, felines and canines. Like, look at Arcanine, he's a giant fire dog. I would love that though. And even dragons! There is dragons in the world of Pokemon. I would love to live in a world with dragons, but the reality of it is probably far different to the fantasy. Whew. Picture your favourite Pokemon, alright? Now close your eyes, y'all. Let's breathe through the nose. Close your eyes, picture your favourite Pokemon. Now picture your least favourite Pokemon. Are there any Pokemon out there that would perhaps unnerve or alarm you? Can you imagine a world full of Beedrill and 8-foot Scolopedes? Like, Scolopede's height is 8'2". Like, that is not a world I want to live in. No offence to bug types, but I'm definitely on Misty's team when it comes to an absolute horror. Like, I can't even handle a tiny bee. What am I going to be like when, like, a Vespiquen comes flying at me? The plant and grass type Pokemon as well, with their vast and diverse range of corrosive, acidic, toxic attacks, makes for some very disturbing Pokedex reading. And all this isn't Game Freak being cruel or unnecessarily violent. This is a fighting game, and for the most part, Pokemon are based on real inhabitants of the animal kingdom and their behaviours. And the animal kingdom happens to have claws and teeth. Very big teeth. While Detective Pikachu gave us a glamorized insight into a world where people and Pokemon coexist, I would honestly prefer to live in a world without Darkrai and Giratina as a legitimate daily threat. We have enough to be contending with the coronavirus and Trump. So let's leave distortion world dwelling Satan Mon out of the mix. The next area to focus on, again with regards to Pokemon and horror, in Straight Outta Kanto's opinion, is Pokédex entries. While the Pokédex entries are generally there to serve as useful information on the Pokemon you've just captured, more often than not, they are a source of great alarm. Can you think of any that have unsettled you? Come on, shout them at the screen here. Pretend we're all in a sweaty hotel room at a brilliant convention having a great time all in cosplay. Come on. Yeah, that's right. There are plenty of creepy ass Pokemon Pokedex entries out there. Now, as we previously discussed, due to the grim nature of the animal kingdom and natural world, Pokedex entries can cast a dark shadow on an otherwise adorable Pokemon. However, some Pokedex entries don't have nature as an excuse. Some of them are just downright gruesome and grim. For example, Cacturne, the Scarecrow Cactus Pokemon. Cacturne silently stands in the darkened desert to wait for weary travellers to collapse nearby so it can swoop in and drain them of their blood. I'm afraid of scarecrows to begin with, so this really isn't helping. Also, Palossand. Okay, so Palossand possesses those building sandcastles, inhabits the sandcastle, then drains the maker of the sandcastle of their vitality, and then hoards their bones under the sandcastle. Okay, that's ghoulish enough to begin with, but coupled with the fact that the majority of sandcastle makers would logically probably be children, that's disturbing. Okay, here we go. Speaking of children and Pokédex entries, Kids don't have a very good time, okay, in the Pokemon world, okay? For example, the Abracadabra Alakazam line of Pokemon originates from the story that there was a young boy with such phenomenal psychic prowess, it overpowered him and he woke up as a Pokemon. Like, that's from a genuine Pokedex entry. Like, that's what Game Freak are telling you happened. Another example. And we can't have a Pokemon horror panel discussion on creepy child-based Pokemon Pokedex entries without discussing the king of horror Pokedex entries, Hypno. Oh my god, I literally bet you were wondering how long it would take for me to bring Hypno up in a panel about horror in Pokemon. So Hypno is already creepy enough to begin with. He's a psychic type Pokemon. Him and his pre-evolution Drowsy have creepy long noses. They're just very unsightly and unsettling to begin with. So add in Pokemon Fire Red's Pokedex entry for Hypno and you've got yourself some nightmare fuel. The Pokedex entry for Hypno from Fire Red is as follows. Imagine this in a Dexter voice. It carries a pendulum-like device. There was once an incident in which it took away a child. It hypnotized. Now there is absolutely no context for that. We are not given any closure, and we're not told anything about why it took the child. Was the child okay? Was it just going to eat it because, you know, it's a monster and it's going to eat children? Or was it something a bit more on the hee-hee side? We don't know. Due to the already eerie, elderly, humanoid kind of characteristics of Hypno and the cliffhanger of the Pokedex entry, this was the birth of the Pokemon creepypasta. It reminds me a bit of like in the original Frankenstein Universal movie, where they showed Frankenstein playing with the small child and being all happy. He throws the child into the lake because he's a bit stupid, and the child dies. And you just see the child's father in a lake, but they cut that bit out of the movie because of the censors. But what they did show was the father walking back into town with the dead, bedraggled child. That made it look like Frankenstein did something far worse than just throwing her in the lake. So maybe we are being unfair on our poor old Hypno, who inspired the very terrifying poem I recited at the start of the panel here. It can be found on YouTube anywhere. It's known as Hypno's Lullaby, and nobody knows who originally wrote it, and maybe we don't want to. Next up on the list for Straight Outta Kanto's horror in Pokemon panel is, of course, or maybe not of course, environmental horror. Oh, as we discussed, the game creators don't just make a standard children's game. More often than not, they do try to impart a valuable life lesson or two along the way. While friendship, love, compassion, and the rewards of hard work and perseverance are the primary morals, there's also a long history of stark global environmental issues referenced all the way back to Red and Blue. For example, the very existence of muck and grimer, coughing and wheezing, and later Trubbish and Garbodor. They are direct products of human waste and pollution. Lapras in the original games was one of the original endangered species of the Pokemon world, while our dear gentle giant of the seas has been saved in the Alola Pokedex entries of Gen 7 by years of careful conservation. They are now in abundance. Lapras has been saved. That is very heartening to hear. However, by Gen 8, poor Corsola wasn't so lucky. So gone is the kawaii pink coral water little Pokemon, and here is a grim, washed out ghost type mon. Thanks to climate change in Galar, Corsola have been completely wiped out. Oh, it's heartbreaking to look at. Like, it's really depressing. Like, I know they're trying to stress an important environmental point, but I don't know a single person that hasn't been completely bummed out by Corsola's new forms in Pokemon Sword and Shield. It looks exactly like what dead coral looks like. It's washed out, it's grey, it's drained, and it's got like the saddest little sad face ever. It's awful. And they even gave Corsola a second evolution, Cursola, which looks even more grim and depressed and grey. So have fun with that. Now, I know while moral lessons can generally sound preachy in normal circumstances, Game Freak do get away with highlighting very real and very dire environmental issues. Just like the old man by the sea in Slateport City in Ruby and Sapphire, who's like, me and my zigzagoon go around picking up rubbish on the beach every morning. You have to be careful what you put into the sea, because it all comes back to haunt us at the end. And I think poor Corsola is a grim reminder of that truth. But hooray for Lapras, yeah? Another set of inhabitants affected negatively by environmental factors is none other than Team Skull. Team Skull are disadvantaged youths turning to crime, causing harm to Pokémon and people due to their unfortunate socio-economic backgrounds. The same also applies roughly to Team Rocket themselves, who are inspired by the Yakuza. Team Rocket steal, maim and even kill Pokémon for profit. Stolen Pokémon end up in their pachinko parlour-influenced game corners, and they're not above murdering Cubones and Marowaks to sell their skulls on the black market. And let's not forget their love of chopping off Slowpoke tails, an act that forced an evolutionary change in Slowpoke. Team Rocket's vile deeds actually altered nature. Again, with kind of environmental elements, there is, of course, Mewtwo and man-made Pokemon, and the horrific ethical questions that raises. Obviously, the creators of Pokemon would obviously be keeping an eye on scientific advances as well as the animal kingdom and plant world. And with cloning and AI and designer babies and all that, they are kind of emulating and kind of lightly referencing that throughout the Pokemon games. Another kind of a weird one that I've never heard anybody else mention before, but something kind of weird that I noticed last year while looking through some Pokédex entries for another panel was Porygon. So Porygon, obviously he's the digital virtual man. He is a man-made Pokemon, but here's what gets me, right? Porygon's actual Pokédex entry says, Porygon was made using cutting-edge technology of the time, 20 years ago. And it's like, Porygon's obsolete now. Like, that's a whole living being that's gone. Now, obviously, with Porygon 2, his evolution, he has been updated. And then with Porygon Z, Porygon 2 was updated. He got a super upgrade and is meant to be able to travel through dimensions for some reason, but is super glitchy. So, but what happens to the original Porygon? Are there no more original Porygons? Is it just going to be forever Porygon 2 or Porygon Z? Like, the technology of 20 years ago wouldn't be supported by any of today's networks or servers. So what happens to poor Porygon? He has a consciousness, he's considered a Pokemon, he's not just a digital app or something. So what happens to Porygon? He's obsolete. I find that horrifying. Like, does that mean he has a short lifespan? Does he not exist anymore? Has Porygon become extinct? No one is talking about that. I want to know what's happened to Porygon. Again, all these are just general overviews. We could go into all of this in depth, but this is just a few things for you to be thinking over with your brain. Yeah, you're welcome. Phew. Okay, so, are you still with me? Because Straight Outta Kanto is still with you. Okay, so that is a lot to take in. I know, you've got the spooky ghosts, you've got the yokai, you've got the big teeth and claws and fur that go roar. You've got the grim realities of the environment and climate change and and the ethics of Pokemon man cloning creation and playing God. And then you've got just some really disturbing Pokédex entries that makes you wonder what the Game Freak creators have going on in their backgrounds. What hangovers have they got left from childhood that makes them want to create Pokemon that take away children? Or kill people, you know? Now, I have the greatest respect for Game Freak and Nintendo and all that. I just think it's really fun to delve way too deep into innocuous things and come up with some great ideas and then share them with lovely people like yourself. Which brings me nicely to the fifth, and for now, final element of horror in Pokemon. And that is... Give me a drum roll. Come on. Beat on your screens there. Come on. Drum roll, drum roll, drum roll. You. the fans, the creators of creepypasta and spreader of urban legends on Reddit and DeviantArt and Twitter and the like. Taking every ghostly, grim and ghastly element of Pokemon into account, the number one most frightening horror element of Pokemon is the fans. Yes, you, us, we, me. Have you actually seen some of the fan art out there? Or read any of the creepypastas? Like, it's sick. Nightmare fuel in the extreme. And I love it. I absolutely adore Pokemon fan art of every description, horror or otherwise. I love Pokemon creepypastas. They are just such a wonderful distraction from the real world, and they add such a dark and deviant and fantastic other element to a really nice nostalgic memory. It makes you feel like less of a weirdo for liking a children's game as an adult if there's some non-children related things in it. There are many really cool creepypastas out there. Some of them would be Strangled Red, Lost Silver, and Buried Alive. I'm not going to spoil them for you. I definitely think you guys should go check them out on YouTube or Reddit or wherever you find your creepypastas. However, hands down, the king of the Pokémon creepypasta is, without a doubt, Lavender Town Syndrome. Hands up, who knows what Lavender Town Syndrome is? As we discussed earlier on in the panel, there is, in the original Red and Blue games, and their subsequent adaptations and reboots, Lavender Town. Lavender Town is this purple little town, pretty inconsequential. Nothing really major happens there except that they have got the creepiest theme tune of all time and a big-ass Pokemon graveyard that is haunted as hell. So, with regards to the sheer eeriness and evilness of the Lavender Town theme tune, you know, so creepy, there was an urban legend to end all urban legends. Now, obviously, or maybe not obviously, some of you may or may not know, the Pokemon Red and Blue that we got in the West was not the actual Pokemon Red and Blue. Originally in Japan, there was Pokemon Red, Blue, and Green. The original Red was very buggy, and they updated it in the further Green and Blue and kind of fixed things up. So we got more debugged and sanitized versions of Blue and Green. Oh no, it was Red and Green. We never actually got the original Japanese Blue, so our Red and Blue is different. But the rumour was that in the original Pokemon Red, Blue and Green from Japan, with regards to the Lavender Town theme, there was a secret hidden note in the music that, due to its binaural frequency, could only be heard by children under a certain age. And such was the binaural frequency included in the theme tune. It inspired such feelings of panic, terror, distress, that any child playing the original Pokemon games who heard this note felt compelled to kill themselves. Not just kill themselves, but dismember, burn, gouge, exsanguinate, really grim and gruesome methods of death. Obviously, chances are that didn't happen. It did appear in a few news articles in Japan at the time, but other than that, it is, of course, just a really cool, if not twisted, urban legend. How do you feel about that? Like, it is like a really disturbing version of, you know, Eric Cartman from South Park, his brown note, the secret brown note you play on the recorder and it makes you poop your pants. Respect my authority! That's basically what happened with the Lavender Town theme syndrome. And the Lavender Town theme music is just so creepy. It gets played underneath every, like, that's what the Hypno's Lullaby poem is set to the music of, and there's just so much you can say about it. Like, who would even think of taking a creepy piece of music from a children's game and saying, oh yeah, that music makes children kill themselves? And why only children? Like, was it done deliberately? Was it not done deliberately? There was a similar rumour as well going around that originally in Lavender Tower, instead of seeing the black spooky sprites of the ghosts before you get the sylphscope, there was rumours that they were going to do like flashing, kind of distorted, grainy images of horror that were like scientifically designed to instill heightened senses of panic and terror, but that they were too scientifically horrifying to include, and they could induce suicidal thoughts and actions in children. Again, all just rumours, fan theories, urban legend that's kind of snowballed. No smoke without fire, I know. I don't know where people could have originally gotten this idea from. But one thing is definitely certain. The Lavender Town theme music is very creepy. It is the creepiest music. Now, actually, to be fair, the Pokémon soundtracks across all 8 main games, and then even in the spin-offs, Mystery Dungeon, Ranger, everything, the music is always charming and unique, very engaging and arresting. There's a lot going on, and Junichi Masuda, with his original soundtracks for Red and Blue, etc., has just created such a legacy of nostalgia. It's actually tangible, a tangible level and legacy of nostalgia. Lavender Town, though, is my favourite urban legend, even though there are others. There are others. I have some fan theories straight out of Kanto, if you're amenable, would very much like to share some of their own personal fan theories with you. Who remembers Red? Like the physical character Red, who reappears in Pokemon Gold and Silver after you've defeated both gym leaders of Kanto and Johto, and you're on top of Mount Silver, and there's Red, and it's ... the greatest non-sentence of your life. Who remembers him? Yeah, good, I knew you would. What kind of weirds me out about Red is he is considered the strongest trainer in the games. He's a legend. He has won and accomplished so much. Why does he feel the need to go alone to the top of the most dangerous mountain? Is it a training thing? The same way that other gym leaders would meditate under Tojo Falls and go battling and training in rocky, dangerous, icy, water-filled terrain, you know? Like, what's with that? Like, what's he running from? Like, no one goes to the top of Mount Silver unless they're running from something. And maybe Red has a lot to run from. He didn't get to be Red, the greatest Pokemon trainer of all time, without stepping on a few toes or killing a few Raticates. What you think about that, guys? Did Red kill Blue's Raticate? If you don't know what I'm talking about, I highly recommend that you look that one up. What happened to Gary's Raticate? That's your homework for Straight Outta Kanto, and then get back to me on the Facebook page for Straight Outta Kanto and let me know what you think about what Red did to Blue's Raticate. So that's what I'm thinking. Why is Red up there on his own? Who is he running from? What is he running from? Definitely something more sinister going on under the surface. Definitely. Another one I like to think about is, who remembers the Trickmaster from Hoenn? You know, when you're on your way to Mobile City, in between Slateport City, there's this house, and it's like the Trickmaster's house, and he's this weird talking, spinning man who has like dozens of lost teens trapped in his basement who can't get out. Like, I know the main point of the Trickmaster house is that it's a vehicle for practicing your new HM move on, and you get a fun little toy at the end, but still, like, it's an old man's house on a pretty sparse patch of land, and he's got a bunch of teens in his house, and they can't get out, and it's like, are they even there? What if they're ghosts of teens who died, waiting to get out of the Trickmaster's house? And you know what? If they don't even have the HM to begin with to get them out of the house, why did they go in the first place? Is the Trickmaster of Hoenn really a Candyman? Who knows? Another rumour that Straight Outta Kanto stumbled across from an audience participation part of a panel last year was Missingano's true identity. Now, obviously, Missingano is a famous glitch in the original Pokemon Red and Blue games, and it's basically, he's like some kind of extra space for data or something technical like that. I'm not very technical, but he was a bit of code or something that you can actually encounter and battle with in the game if you kind of rig it to certain circumstances. But some people were saying that sometimes Missingano unscrambles as a skeletal character. Not dissimilar to Kabuto, or Kabutops rather. And some were saying that there was meant to be like a Pacific Island style situation going on alongside Cinnabar Island and the Seafoam Islands, where there was meant to be like a scientist who did experiments on Pokemon, and they were the dead Pokemon, and it was just going to be like an island of dead Pokemon, and this Missingano was like, or Missingno, whatever way you want to pronounce it, you know who I'm talking about. And that the whole sea between Cinnabar Island and Seafoam Island wasn't going to be filled with endless bloody tentacool, the dead Pokemon of this mad scientist. And some people in the audience agreed with this theory, even though I'm not 100% certain on it myself. They did agree because they were like, well, you know, Japan during the war and the South Seas with their islands where they would do all sorts of Joseph Mengele style experiments on people and things and stuff, you know, don't quote me on it, that's just history that was thrown at me from the back of a hotel room during a convention. That's something to think about, is what is Missingano to begin with anyway. We could do a whole panel on Missingano, but we won't. Another kind of creepy thing to discuss is N. Who likes N? From Pokemon Black and White. King N, the damaged man-child. Oh my god. So obviously N is like he's kind of the villain, but he's more the puppet for Getsus and his 7 sages, who are trying to take over the world for some reason. N is special because he can talk to Pokemon, but he's got really weird daddy issues because he is rejected by his dad, even though his dad harnesses his power. Oh, my hamster just woke up. Hi! Oh, she's doing a wee. Okay, I'll stop telling all of America this. So N is kind of just such messed up daddy issues and has come from such an oppressive environment that he's just completely messed up. His mentality is totally warped and childlike. This is amplified by the fact that when you go into N's room in the castle part of Pokemon Black and White, it's like a children's playroom, and the music is all discordant and disjointed and broken. Oh, just like N's mentality. So that's another creepy example of psychological daddy issue horror in Pokemon. God, there is just so much more we here at Straight Outta Kanto could discuss with you, like the Pokemon being forced to evolve. For example, Team Rocket are primarily the main villains forcing Pokemon to evolve, like at the Lake of Rage. But then Lance in the original games had super level, pre-evolved, leveled Pokemon Dragonites. Was Lance a part of Team Rocket originally, and that's why he fought so hard in the Gold and Silver games to get rid of them? What about the constant references in the later games to great Pokemon wars where Pokemon died? Pokemon were used as tools and instruments of war. King AZ and the ultimate weapon, all the Pokemon tied to the stones of Geosenge City. Are Muck and Grimer Team Rocket's attempt at recreating ghost Pokemon? There's just endless things we could discuss. But there's one last spooky thing I'm gonna leave y'all with. So, who here has played Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon? Okay, have y'all finished it by now? Okay, so for those of you who have finished it, who remembers the post-game part of the game where you go back to Melly Melly Island, there's a beach there, there's a little girl who's having a bit of a problem up at the Pokemon Trainer School. Turns out, at the Pokemon Trainer School, there's been some occurrences not of a normal nature. We're talking phantom lights, disembodied voices, cold spots, and classes full of students who shouldn't be there. The Trainer School 7-part mini quest is fantastic. fantastic. It is spooky. It contains traditional J-horror tropes straight from the movies for anybody who hasn't played it themselves yet because they got bored playing Ultra Sun and Moon or something, or they might find a playthrough of it on YouTube. I would highly recommend giving it a go. It is so cool and spooky and is just a direct horror fest. Like I said, I could talk about this for weeks, but I don't want to bore you lovely people. But I do want to say thank you so much for listening for the last hour. I really had a great time talking to you all. Thank you so much to Anime Lockdown for having little old Straight Outta Kanto here with you. And don't forget that fun doesn't have to end at all. It doesn't. Find Straight Outta Kanto on Facebook and on WordPress. We also have a podcast radio show on the Nerd to Know Media site on iTunes, Spotify, and SoundCloud. We're also affiliated with Nerd to Know Media on Twitch and all sorts of nerdy gamer things like that. So, Straight Outta Kanto. Thank you and stay spooky, AnimeCon.
Well, that was nice. That was our, I believe that's our only pre-recorded panel for the weekend. So it was a little bit different. Obviously you weren't able to interact with them, but you can find Straight Outta Kanto on social media and let them know what you thought about their panel if you have any questions.